Welcome to Rise and Divine. Today is going to be a special episode because we have a guest today with us. She's an energy worker, author, and meditation expert. She specializes in meditation, manifestation, spirituality, energy work, and much more. Over 15 years, she has helped thousands to live a better and an empowered life. And today, she is going to enlighten us with her great knowledge. So, without any delay, let's welcome Lisa Erickson.
Oh,
Hello, welcome to the show, Lisa.
thank you. Thank you for having me. And I want to make sure I get your name correct. Can you give me your
Yes,
pronunciation?
it is Divyanka. Yes,
Divyanga.
Divyanka.
Divyanka. Divyanka. Divyanka. Great. Thank
So
you.
great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Okay, so let's start with an interview. And first of all, I would like you to introduce yourself and how did you get into this field of energy work, and also a bit of what actually energy work is.
Yeah. Well, so my name is Lisa Erickson, and as you said, I call myself an energy worker, similar to being an energy healer, but worker is a little broader because we're working also on maybe personal goals, manifesting, relationships, things like that, not only healing. And of course, energy work, energy healing is part of a holistic view that our mind, body, psyche, spirit, energy body are all linked, and our energy body is really like this interface. And so there's a lot of different kinds of energy work, but you're really working with, you're focusing and using different techniques to shift the energy that's moving through your subtle body.
Okay.
And I got into this work. I worked in technology for a long time, and I got into this through a meditation practice, and eventually migrated to training in this because it had such an impact on my own life.
Okay, so what kind of impact you're talking about, and how did you thought of it to just pursue it as a profession?
Yeah. Well, at the point I pursued it, I had been meditating myself for almost 15 years. And the form that I meditated was chakra meditation and Kundalini meditation.
Okay,
Kundalini being a specific, one of the energies that moves through the chakras or energy system, that's really linked to personal growth, awakening, a spiritual practice. And I really had also had at one point a lot of issues with stress headaches and stomach aches. I didn't know they were stress related. This was in my prior career. And as I began to work with different energy practices, I was able to kind of reprogram my own nervous system to manage stress better. So that was sort of my first experience for myself. Later on, as I began to study this more, I had children. I had some health issues after the birth of my first daughter, and I got really interested specifically
okay.
in women's health and women's energetics, and everything from fertility to postpartum to perimenopause. And so that really launched this whole other career, which I've now been doing for almost 20
Wow.
years. And I have a book out called Chakra Empowerment for Women that's really focused on that women's energetics
Okay,
work.
so this is all coming from this personal experience, and you also mentioned about your
Yeah.
book. So can you explain a bit more about it?
Yeah. So my book, Chakra Empowerment for Women, is specifically focused in on my women's energetics work, but it's focused on 12 tools that are visualization and affirmation based. There's a lot of different ways to work with the chakras, but obviously in a book, working visually and with words is one of the most common and one of the most helpful. So they're really meant to, each of the activations, as I call them, is meant to bring forth a certain energy related to the chakras. So some are related to boundaries, having better boundaries. Some are related to speaking more clearly. Some are related to working on heart issues, feelings of unworthiness or self doubt. Some are linked to spiritual, which is crown. A lot are linked to healing sexual trauma because I work so much with women and I've encountered so many women that have experienced some form of either sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual assault on different levels. And that impacts our psyche and energy body. And so I do a lot of work with the lower chakras around
Okay.
safety in the body and releasing releasing some of that trauma through chakra work. So this book really encompasses all of that.
Okay, that's so amazing because it actually carries a whole lot of information, and we can discuss a bit more about all of these. So, starting with, you mentioned about the chakras. So, what are actually the chakras for someone who is, just beginning in this field, and how can we align them to enhance the quality of living in both materialistic and also in spiritual world, obviously?
Yeah. Well, one way to think about the chakras is in our subtle body or energy body, they're like the organs. They're like the major organs, like your heart and your lungs and your stomach, right? So the main chakras are the main energy centers. There's different mappings. The one that has kind of become the most well known is a seven chakra mapping of seven primary chakras paralleling the spine, kind of moving up the center of the body from your tailbone up to the crown of your head. But in fact, if you study the world's cultures, there's a lot of, and Tibetan systems, which is, I've done a lot of studying of Tibetan systems and other systems as well. There's anywhere from 4 to 10,
Yeah,
but
right.
these seven are kind of the most common, that really you focus on. And then there's all these minor chakras,
Yes,
other little energy centers, just like your other physical body has different nerve systems, different smaller blood vessels. So the way, there's different ways to work with the chakras. So in certain energy medicine traditions, the chakras are linked to certain physical systems, and you're working to balance, clear, etc., in relationship to the physical body. Then there's a layer of the chakras that's linked to the psyche, to mental and emotional patterns, right? And so
okay,
you can be working more on more from personal development. And then there's a level of the chakras that's linked to spirit, right? However you want to define that. So we have these different levels you can work on the chakras, and if you think holistically, they're all connected,
right,
right? You're as a whole person's physical illness has a psychological component. Sometimes it has a spiritual component. Sometimes a spiritual block or personal issue impacts your physical health. So
right.
they're not separate. So you can kind of work at whatever level is presenting at a different time.
Right, that is actually true, and especially in today's time when there is an unsaid anxiety people are facing. They don't know about what is actually bothering them, but maybe there's something wrong with the energetic field that they are going through. So this really helps to understand why things are happening in a way. And you also mentioned that you focus more on women, and you also wrote a book related to them. So energy wise, men and women are different.
Mm. Well, it's really about these different levels of the subtle body. So you could say at the level of the subtle body that connects to spirituality, the Kundalini, there's no difference, right? Maybe even at the level of psyche, really, it's about we have different condition patterns. We've had different life experiences, maybe as
Yes.
men and women. But where there really is a difference is when you get to the level of the subtle body that's linked to the physical body. So, for example, in energy medicine, each of the main chakras is linked to a particular glandular system. So, the first chakra is linked to the adrenals. The second chakra, for women, it's linked to the ovaries. For men, it's linked to the prostate. And in physical medicine, that it's so interesting that the differences in our hormones actually impacts all the rest of our physical body, not just our reproductive system. Our hormonal differences have different differences in our heart health, differences in our brain health. Our physical body is a whole system. So it's really the same in terms of women's energetics. There's a level at which working with the chakras is no different for men
Okay.
and women, right? But there's a level where it is different because you have this physical link.
Hmm.
And for women, for example, we have a monthly cycle,
Hmm.
then we have potentially pregnancy and postpartum, then we have perimenopause and menopause. Men have cycles too, but for women, it's much more dramatic.
Yes.
And you see those you see, we have much more dramatic energy shifts as well related to those physical
So
shifts.
can you explain how the body energy change during the different phases of a women's life? Because we definitely
Yeah.
experience a lot of turbulences as well at some point, and then it also impacts our physical health as well. So can you explain those body changes energy wise?
Yeah. I think one of the most important for women to know about, women who menstruate, is the monthly cycle. And, we have this hormonal cycle that's going, right, every month. And our energy body, especially our second chakra, has this cycle of sort of opening and closing. And those days going into our menstrual cycle, our energy body is actually at its most sensitive. And so we actually, at that point, sometimes need a little bit more energetic protection or boundary work, right? If you're out in the world, maybe you need to isolate more. If you don't have that luxury of
Hmm.
isolating, there are things you can do with your navel and root chakra to sort of shore up your energy body, because you're more sensitive at that time.
Right.
And then we have this naturally emanating energy at the peak of our cycle. So learning to work with that energy can be very helpful. Then pregnancy is a fascinating time, because really the second chakra, or the sacral chakra, is a spiritual doorway, in the way that our physical body is the physical doorway for
Right.
birth, right? So there's this blissful energy that many women report that feels spiritual to many of them. And so that's a very interesting opening of the second chakra. And it kind of goes from there. Then postpartum,
Mhm.
that door kind of closes, and a lot of women will experience this crash that is hormonal, but it's also
Right.
energetic. You now have a line to your children. You have an energy line to your children,
Hmm.
especially when they're very young. You have to learn how to manage that line. And then we get to perimenopause and menopause, where the whole cycle that you've had for 30, 40
Hmm.
years begins to first be very irregular and then stabilize. And so then you have to learn how to work with this new energy in a way that is empowering but not rigid,
Right.
right? So that's kind of that was a very fast summary, but that's kind of, it's a lot, right? It's a lot of different shifts.
Definitely, because it takes a lot actually, and now that women are actually working and managing household and everything, so it is very essential for them to recognize how to balance their body energies. And that is why I want to specifically ask about the monthly cycles, because a lot of women are going to watch this. So what are your views when it comes to managing our energy during the monthly cycles? What can they do to balance their energies, and what are the chakras that they can work on? Maybe some techniques or some short methods where they can protect their energy fields.
Yeah. To some extent, it depends how a woman experiences it, but I would say the majority of women that I work with do experience this increased sensitivity
Hmm.
and sometimes fatigue going into menstruation, right? Like in those last few days before. We sometimes medically call it PMS, and there's hormonal, but putting that word aside, which some people don't like, right? Energetically, there's this sensitivity. What usually can benefit is focusing on the first and third chakras, which are on either side. The first being really linked to the tailbone, the legs, the earth
The
element.
root chakra, right?
And then the third in the belly, linked to the fire element. And that really is our boundaries, right? And so this fire and earth energy, this first and third chakra, it's very stabilizing to focus on the two of them together. It really creates this sense of an energetic filter or shield.
Okay.
And you can really learn to cultivate that as a stabilizing force as you move into that, and an energizing force as you move into that phase of your cycle.
Right, the root chakra and the solar plexus chakra, the elements.
Yeah, I work more with the navel as the third and
Okay,
the
okay.
sacral lower, as opposed to the solar plexus. But it's all the same chakra. It's just a matter of where do you focus. Do you focus on the bottom of it, or do you focus a little higher? And different traditions do one or the other. So it's just a
Right.
preference for me.
And then you talked about
Mm.
postpartum, and it is
Yeah.
also a very emerging topic these days, with like social media emerging, and people are talking about it. Maybe in our previous generations, like if I talk about the women around me, they never talked about such things. Maybe they faced a phase of dullness, or maybe some disturbances happening, but they never termed it like something. So the conversations are happening right now. And you also mentioned about the sharing of energy with the child. So how to deal with that and what actually it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big transition postpartum. Obviously, we know the obvious
Yeah.
things, right? You're not getting much sleep,
Right.
and you have a hormonal crash that occurs, right? So those are already a lot, plus physical healing from your birth experience,
Right.
right? So that's a lot already to be handling. And then in addition, you have your energy body trying to shift back.
Right.
And but it can't go back to how it was but pre-pregnancy, because you now have this energy line that they sometimes call those first 3 months after a baby's born the fourth trimester. You really are almost so linked energetically still to your child that it can feel that way energetically, and you sort of have to learn how to self-care, how to allow yourself some breaks when your baby is cared for by your partner or another family member, how to just sort of almost close the line and allow yourself to focus again energetically, if you choose to, on those lower chakras. It's like reclaiming your own energy,
Right.
right? And then and allowing yourself to do that. um, that also helps with sleep and things like that. So that's often what I'm working with postpartum. The other thing postpartum is there's meant to be this natural flow of energy
Mm.
upward, and the energy kind of pools during pregnancy in the sacral. And so it's like how we oftentimes I'm working with trying to get the energy moving up again. And sometimes it's like it gets stuck, and that's when a woman feels very heavy,
Right.
uh, very hard to get out of that feeling.
Mm.
So the upward flow will help.
And now that we have talked about women, so do men also have similar life transits?
You know, they really do. We now, there is this idea of male menopause, that men actually go through a pretty also profound hormonal shift in their 40s, where their testosterone begins to drop and their impacts their body. And so there is a shift, and there is an opportunity there to really center into the heart and relate to the energy body in a different way. I think, though, for most men, the cycles are not as
Hmm.
pronounced, right? And they don't have this monthly cycle as much. I mean, we all have cycles to some extent, but not as profound a
Hmm.
cycle. But men tend to have, and this is a spectrum really
Right.
between men and women, but in general, men's energy bodies tend to be more anchored in the root chakra instead of the second, and they tend to be more
Okay.
rigid as a they tend to be more rigid. So with men, I'm often working about more flow
Hmm.
through the energy, because there tends to be a more fixed energy. So they have better
Right.
boundaries, but not as much fluidity.
Right. That is why, it is also somewhere I would, the social media memes and everything that women go through, like, mood swings all throughout the day, and men are more like this. So, yes. And
And there's pros and cons to both. There's pros and
yes,
cons.
definitely, there's
Yeah.
pros and cons to both. And you also mentioned about a really important topic, that is sexual traumas. And
Mm.
obviously, both men and women can face it, but you also talked about, how in women it is more prominent. So can you explain what actually it is, and how can healing help in this? Like, how can people actually recognize that they're going through something this?
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, some people know that they were actually abused or assaulted in a way that was
Right.
sexual, right? In other cases, it may be more like sexual harassment, or photographs taken without your consent, or just words thrown at you that just feel icky, right? And maybe we don't have to call whether that's trauma or not. We don't have to worry about which word is the right
Hmm.
word. But the bottom line is, it's a sort of misogynist energy,
Hmm.
and it feels icky, and it makes us kind of constrict, right? Now, someone who's actually experienced abuse or assault, there's often even a whole other level of trauma that leads to a kind of disassociation from the body. And how that represents energetically is kind of like not being anchored on the root chakra or the sacral chakra, sort of almost floating out of the body a little bit, not being grounded and present. And that means a lot of, we're prone to a lot more health issues, a lot more disruptions energetically.
Okay.
We don't feel safe in the
Hmm.
body, and that manifests as generalized anxiety or depression. So it really depends on someone's experience. But most people that have experienced anything like that, where you're going to start again, is those lower
Right.
chakras. It's like they are the foundation of the house. And usually everyone wants to work on the third eye and the heart.
Right.
Feel good,
Yes.
get nice lights
Right.
shining. But it's really that foundation of the house, those lower
Right.
chakras, healing relationship to your body, healing your relationship to your sexual energy, that then helps the rest of the energy flow in a good
Right,
way.
definitely. And you raised a very good point actually, because because now these days, again, social media, there are lot of things happening. Maybe, some right information, some wrong information, but people are very much fascinated about, working on the third eye chakra. And also Kundalini is very prominent, it is being sold like like that. So all of these things are very prominent and everyone wants to work on that aspect, the crown chakra. They want to see the light and everything. But yes, at the core, the strength really lies in the lower chakras. And also it also makes us towards the next topic, which is, if the energies of the parents are not in the right space, because
Mhm.
as you have explained, the people who are not alignment with their own energies, when they decide to have children, then it also affects the parenting and eventually the children. And I've also read that all those also, the anxiety, the patterns also get carried forwarded to the children as well. So to what extent
Mhm.
it can affect the children, and what can help in this matter?
Yeah. Oh, you've raised a lot of great points. And yes, more and more we're recognizing that sort of we carry forward our parents' unhealed patterns,
Right.
right? And I know I have 3 teenagers, right? So, my oldest is, about to turn 19 and twins that are 17. So, it's so interesting, all these things you say you'll never do, and then you hear yourself saying something just like one of your parents did,
Right.
right? Because you have these imprints, and it's very hard to break the cycle. That's really, I think, what it's about. I think spiritual parenting is about 2 things. One is trying to stay present and mindful with your child, which is really hard in this day and age with all the stimulation and screens that we have. Really being able to connect with them, right? And really practicing that presence, right? And then there's breaking the cycle, being working on yourself to recognize the patterns you may have picked up from your parents' unhealed, um, and without blaming them, work to transform that, right? Which is hard, without
Right.
blaming them, because they're just doing their best. They did their best they could do. Now you're doing the best you can
Right.
do, and you will make mistakes. And your kids may talk about you in therapy, and you just but you do your best to try to break the cycle and move forward. Uh, so I think those are really what I've come to.
Right,
Yeah.
important. And yes, without blaming them, it's important to recognize,
Yeah.
because again, you see a lot of children developing, hatred can be a big word, but many of them
Yeah.
have that, um, maybe when they are growing up, listening to the words, the harsh words, again, you don't really term them into traumas or something. But yes, some words get stuck to the children's heart, and then it developed,
Yeah.
it gets converted into a strong emotion, like hatred as well. So it's important, how do we do that actually? And I want to
Yeah.
know. And it is not just about the parents, but it is also about our day-to-day life. Without developing that kind
Yeah.
of hate or that kind of negative emotions towards someone, how can we work on ourselves, like, even in the corporate world? If something goes
Yeah.
wrong, and if anyone around you keeps poking you or making you feel bad, how do we deal with such negative energies?
Yeah. It really takes practice, and we talk about meditation, we use this word meditation practice. And I think that idea of practice is so important, meaning it isn't a light switch, it isn't an insight moment that you just change. You're going to practice. And if you think about practicing a sport or practicing dance or practicing singing, You get better over time, and you don't get better in one practice session. And sometimes you feel like you're going backwards, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you get better. And then, I trained as a dancer growing up. One day you could do the double turn, and then a week later you couldn't do it anymore,
Right.
right? And then eventually it becomes stable and you can do it. So I think it's the same thing with our patterns. You notice your emotional patterns. You're like, okay, whenever someone tries to give me feedback, I feel threatened and defensive, and I start to argue with them, right? This is this pattern. And maybe you think about why this does this come from something in your childhood. Then it's about what I like to work with is like at first, work with the memory of that happening
Hmm.
after the fact. Like you recognize you did it. You're thinking back at the end of the day
Hmm.
and go, where did I feel that feeling of defensiveness or I've got to fight this in my
Okay.
body? And then I try to, then there's chakra techniques to kind of let it go, let that not go. So at first, maybe you're doing it retroactively, but eventually you'll start catching yourself in the moment. You may even notice where you feel it in your body in the moment, and then you have a choice, right? You have a choice. Oh, I just got triggered.
Hmm.
You take a breath, let that go, and respond in another way, not in my old habitual way. But sometimes you'll do it and sometimes you won't. And it's
It's
practice,
practice.
right?
That's fine.
And then, of course, that brings us back to meditation, right? Because that is what you're practicing in meditation. No matter what kind of meditation you practice, you are practicing that
Hmm.
presence, being present with whatever you're feeling,
Right.
as opposed to just your mind, going, going, going.
Right. So it's all about getting started. And a lot of people
Yeah.
also, struggle in that point because yes, the meditations and getting yourself grounded, being in the present moment is something that a lot of people know that this is something that okay, we should
Yeah.
do this. But again, they struggle with this
Yes.
fact of maintaining that focus because again, you actually raised a very good point here that it takes practice any sport or anything that you're starting, but what people expect from spirituality or from meditations that they need to see the results, they need to see how effective it is, like they can feel the meditations happening or the meditation working in their head for like 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes later they're back to snapping impulsive behaviors and everything, so they want to see the result very impulsively in their regular practice as well, so that patience
Yeah.
somewhere when it comes to spirituality is lacking. And again, as you said that not everything is going to be forward, there are going to be times when you
Yeah.
would find yourself being held back, or maybe again the progress can be reversed as well. So what
Exactly.
is your message to the people who are struggling with this, or who are struggling to maintain that focus during the meditation, or who are just so impulsive to see the results, and how they can manage that?
Yeah. Well, you use the word patience, right? And I know it isn't what people want to hear, right? Yeah, it isn't like taking a pill,
Right.
right? It is more like learning to play the piano or exercising. Like you may exercise, and sometimes you like it, and sometimes you
Hmm.
don't. But science has told us it's good for you to do it regularly.
Hmm.
Whether you like it or not, in the long term, it has these effects. Basically, science has proven the same thing about
Meditation
meditation,
meant.
right? Yeah. So some days you may like it, some days you may not, right? And you may feel like it was a waste of your time, but it never actually is because if you stick with it, we've shown that it actually will begin to
Yes.
repattern your brain. Now, I do think that it is important to find ways to connect it during your day. So, like that memory
Hmm.
exercise I talked about, like at the end of your day, think over your day and pick one reaction you had that
Hmm.
day where you got triggered and just rewrite that one. Feel where did I feel it in my body? Let it go. And it starts to create this bridge between, say, your sitting meditation and daily experiences because it is possible to meditate for a long time and never make that bridge into daily
Right.
life. The point is to be able to catch yourself, just like in meditation, you're thinking about
Hmm.
something and you catch yourself. You're strengthening that muscle. The point is to be able to start catching yourself during the day, but you do have to sort of direct that. You do have to sort of direct
Right.
that.
And this is very important to do because yes, people do meditate and then they say that again the waste of time, because they're not
Yeah.
able to maintain or identify that bridge, you know because
Yeah.
meditation is being again sold as something transformative, something that you would just
Yeah.
switch the I would say another aspect of you, another um, body of you, and people
Yeah.
expect that. But again, it's not like taking that pill. And maybe that is why a lot of people, instead of paying into this healthy meditations and everything, they are somewhere directing towards the substances. Again, substance abuse come, and these days I do see that vaping is very popular these days. The teenagers are very much into this habit. So what are your views when it comes to substance abuse, how they can somewhere energetically shift towards being more regular when it comes to meditating? Because someone who is relying a lot on that substance, how can they break that bridge and get into meditations?
It's very hard, especially if someone has gotten to the point where there is a chemical addiction. There's a physical body, biological process happening then that usually people need some other support to
Right.
help break, right? And so, I would really encourage someone to do that. And in fact, it's interesting in terms of my own client
Hmm.
practice. Addiction issues are something that if someone says, "Oh, I'm coming to you to help me heal my addiction," I don't actually work with someone unless they're also
Yes.
in a substance abuse
Right.
program, because you need that support, right? So it's so important. But so many substance abuse programs and addiction programs now do incorporate meditation for exactly that
Hmm.
reason. Because once you've broken through the addiction, what you have to be able to do is the next time you have that desire that I need that substance, you have to be able to sit with that very uncomfortable feeling and choose differently, right? And that is what meditation is training you to do. So it's a really powerful, powerful combination.
Right. So it's important
Yeah.
for seeking that professional help as well, and also in the medical terms, and also with this spiritual work. So it goes hand in hand. We cannot
Yeah.
just rely on this particular thing. And I think it goes with
Yeah.
multiple things as well. So if you are facing some physical issues or anything, even with the mental issues as well, mental health is very getting, again, the a lot of people are talking about it. So they need to be in that professional training, or some professional aspect of that. And then the spiritual healing can actually, this would be, I believe that this would be more like settling the strong foundations for the future. So it goes side by side.
Yes.
And
Yeah, absolutely. Address the physical and the psychological and the spiritual,
yes,
right? The whole being.
so it's all
Yeah.
about combining all
Yeah.
the efforts.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can someone starting with their spiritual journey, needs to take care of things like how they can adapt to their new way of living? And what would be your message to someone who's just starting with their spiritual journey?
Yeah. Really gravitate, give yourself exploration time and gravitate to the teachers, maybe through videos or books that you feel a connection to, because it is very individual. It is very individual, and there's a lot of different meditation techniques. So, some people do very well with mindfulness, breath based
Hmm.
practice. Some people, I really, I'm a high energy person. I have a busy mind. I came to meditation with a busy mind. So for me, the chakras were perfect because it was more active. It was like I'm visualizing a color, maybe a mantra. There was more going on. And so that kept my mind engaged until I could anchor it in that. So some people are very visual. And
Right.
so visual meditations where you're visualizing are very helpful. Other people are not visual at
Hmm.
all, and sound really helps them, right? There's a lot of sound meditations. So I think allow yourself to explore, and then once you've found something, stick with it for a while and anchor it into your day, preferably in the morning, even just a short time, 10 minutes. Anchor it to some other activity, like I have my tea while I'm meditating, or right after I brush my teeth, I meditate, or right after I shower, I meditate for 10
Okay.
minutes and just build it in to anchor it to something you already do every day. And that will help you build up that consistency.
Yes, that is also very important to build that consistency. And this also
Yeah.
brings us to our next question, which is, talking about meditations and everything. It is important for us to hold our energy boundaries very right. So I see that it also comes down to our auras as well. So how can we strengthen our auras? And if you know about it, can you explain a little bit about the auras?
Yeah. So aura to me, and I think people do use this word differently
Yes.
sometimes, aura to me is sort of like the most external part of our energy. It's almost like our energy skin. It's the part that shows, right? To someone seeing it. Then there's all this internal stuff going on too. So it's really like what's at the surface is what impacts your energy. If your aura, if you're feeling angry, that impacts your energy, right? Like however your whatever your current state is, if you're not feeling well, that impacts your aura. So there's a link to your emotional and your physical state, and then it's really sort of this energy field. So I think I like to talk in terms of boundaries when it comes to aura. Like, do you have a strong sense of your boundaries, your filter of what you want forward? And sometimes it may be different. You know, you're going to visit someone who's sick in the hospital. Maybe
Yeah.
you really want heart energy forward. So you can focus on your heart chakra and really feel that coming into your aura. Maybe you're going into a job interview, and so you need your third chakra. You need a sense of confidence, and you want to project that,
Yes, right.
right? So there's different ways that you might focus on a chakra and bring that energy forward into your aura. So that's how I like to think about it.
Yes, that is a good way to actually, explain it and to work with it as well. And
Yeah.
do you also think that it also helps in manifestations? Because manifestations, again, another popular topic of these
Yes.
days. We see a lot of manifestation ads coming across, people using different kind of manifestation techniques. So do you feel that working on our energies and our auras also affect on the manifestations?
Absolutely. I think you're working when you're working with your energy, that means you're shifting your emotions and your thoughts,
Right.
right? So it's another way that shifts your energy. So it's another way of moving towards a goal in an intentional way. Now, I don't completely subscribe to kind of the most basic definition of the law of attraction, like only think about what you want, right? Or like you already have it, like you have to feel as if you already have it. I think there is power to that to some extent because what it forces you to do, if you are trying to feel as if you already have something, it shifts your energy. I do think it shifts your energy in a way to be open to it being real because so often we have all these self-doubts and feelings like that possibly can't
Hmm.
happen. So that's why that's useful, that technique. So I do think it's one tool, but I think there's a lot of other tools related to energy. I like to work with what's called the downward path.
Okay.
Like the upward path is spiritual growth, the downward path is how do you bring something from idea
Fully
into reality
materialistic,
in your
yes.
life.
Right.
And so working with the chakra model as like, okay, how do I see it? How do I
Speak it.
speak it? How do I attract the support I need? This third chakra, how do I execute the tasks? You don't just sit there meditating, imagining what you
Right.
want. You have to, you have to, how to execute the task, right? All the way down. So I think that's another way to work with energy for
Right.
manifesting.
So manifestation is not just about, writing down what you want. And, because there are multiple techniques. So do you feel that those techniques solely can be helpful if someone is not really focusing on the inner work?
I mean, it does something.
Hmm.
You may, in the process of doing that, clear some of the
Yeah,
blocks,
right.
right? But I do think, but often what I see is if people aren't doing the inner
Hmm.
work, they end up frustrated.
Right. The frustration.
And then they end up blaming themselves. And that's when I don't like it, right? So they end up internalizing, I must not be positive enough. It must be me. And internalizing self blame doesn't really help you heal or move
Hmm.
forward. And if you're someone who has healed unhealed trauma or wounds or things like that, right? That really does need to be tended to, right? So blaming yourself just makes almost magnifies that,
Right.
right? So that's where I get a little frustrated sometimes when people start blaming themselves for not being positive enough. We need to feel our feelings,
Right.
right? There's a place for sadness, there's a place for anger. When you're feeling those things, it doesn't mean you're blocking manifesting. Maybe it's a message of something that you need to heal.
Right.
Um, and then and then there is a place for positivity also in manifesting, but just not in a way that represses us feeling our
Right. That is
feelings.
where the term toxic positivity come across,
Exactly.
because
Yeah,
because people
exactly.
just try to enforce that positivity, suppressing the emotions, the negative emotions that they label it. So yes, it's important to work on our energy fields as well. The inner work is essential. And in my personal experience, if I talk about manifestations and everything, I do feel that working on that inner self actually aligns yourself towards the ultimate goals or whatever you're manifesting, then it becomes really easy. You don't really
Yeah,
put a lot of efforts into it, because again, you be in that feeling of gratitude first of all, and then
yeah,
you know that you're working on the inner work. And I've also been working on the chakras as well. So yes, so all those
yeah,
things help you out, they help you to recognize things, and then definitely the manifestation comes easy. So
yeah.
the next question is, what can be some tips for manifestation? Because again, it's a popular topic and people want to know about how they can get started, how they can get the results quickly. So what is your opinion?
Yeah. Well, since I work
Right.
energetically, I think where I always like to start is what is it you want to feel more of as the result of getting this goal? Like someone will say, I want a new job. I need a new job. And usually when they tell you why, they'll tell you all the bad things about their current job,
Right.
right? And then maybe you can get them to switch to the things they want in their new
Right.
job. But really, it comes down to what do you want to feel in that new job? Okay, so maybe if the issue is you need more money, then what you really want to do is feel more secure. If the issue is lack of respect or in your job, you want to feel respected.
Yes.
If the issue is, a lot of bad feelings or stress, you want to feel more at ease, you want to feel more valued. So, let's start with the energies. You want to feel valued, secure, respected, fulfilled. Let's start with those, and that's what you want to feel, and then we can practice feeling that now. And then from that place, clarity usually starts to arise. So that's kind of the first step for me is focus on what you
Right.
want to feel, and that's your true motivation. And often when you do that, people realize, oh, what I thought I wanted, I actually want something a little different when you put it that
Yes.
way, right? Oh, and you also have to prioritize. Maybe you can't have everything. So what are the top things that you want more of in your life? You want to feel more of, you know?
Right. And
Yeah.
here also, the men and women energies play at different roles. Like, I also heard about the terms divine femininity, divine masculinity. So what are these, and how these affect our day-to-day life?
Yeah. On a certain level, I think we all manifest divine feminine and divine masculine. And in a way, that's what the spiritual journey is, right? But in our lived experience, we have, this other kind of one level down from that, we have these different energies that come forth, and feminine energy, which any of us can call on, regardless of whether we're male or
Right.
female, is is the fluid. It represents the fluid, the creative, the passionate, the inspiring, and we need that,
Right.
right? And then in that context, the constructive masculine represents kind of the container, the more linear steps, the more executive function type of thinking. And we need both of those together,
Right.
really, to manifest. So manifesting really is this combination of these two things,
Right.
right? For everyone.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And now that people have recognized you, people have listened to you. So if they want to reach you out, how they can connect with you for personal consultation, or for more purposes?
Yeah. Well, so my book is a great place to start, Chakra Empowerment for Women, and that's available online. It's on Amazon, but it's on many other sites as well. So hopefully, wherever someone is, they can get that. My website is enlightenedenergetics.com. And new classes and schedule will be coming out soon for workshops that I'm teaching. And then I do private sessions by Zoom as well. So all of that's available on Enlightened Energetics or on both Facebook and Instagram under Enlightened Energetics or Chakra Empowerment.
Okay, that's great. What is your last message to the viewers, to the listeners? And yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think just experiment and give it a try. Like a lot of people think meditation's not for me, energy work's not for me. And there really are a lot of entrance points and a lot of approaches. So you're a holistic being. Allow yourself to experiment and widen your horizons. Give things a try with someone like you or someone like me, and give it a try.
Right. That's
Yeah,
that's a great message to give it a try. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you so
yeah.
much, Lisa, to be here with us. And it has been very enlightening for me as well to learn from you and to connect with you as well. So, thank you so much for being
Well,
here.
thank you. Well, thank you, Divyanka, and really, I appreciate you having a whole podcast like this. I know it's a lot of work and highlighting this kind of work, and for your own work in the world, we need as many of us as
Right.
possible, right?
As many of us
Trying
as
to bring
possible.
this information out. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, it's great.
So thank
Thank you
you.
so much.